When Americans think about their nation's slavery issue, they typically think about the treatment of the enslaved. But there was a major business piece to the practice that's often overlooked. The market for slaves in the United States was massive, making up a bigger part of the American economy than Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft do today, combined. But after pondering on the topic of American slavery for a while, it's hard not to wonder, how much did it actually cost to buy a slave? Although the first African slave is thought to have arrived in Virginia in 1619, it wasn't until the 1700s that the trade really ramped up. Over 70% of all enslaved Africans arrived in the Americas after 1700. From this point forward, slavery was a booming business. Millions of enslaved people were bought and sold like livestock, often in bustling markets throughout the Deep South, serving for free to prop up the American economy. Well, yeah, but how much did a slave actually cost? I know, answer the question. Well, like with most historical subjects, a nuanced approach is the only proper approach. Prices could vary drastically depending on age, gender, skill, market demand, and physical appearance. I know you want a number though, so let's talk about it. In the early 1800s, the average price of a prime adult male slave in the United States was roughly $800 to $1,200. Now, $1,000 back then might not sound like a lot, but adjusted for today, that's somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. Yes, you heard that right, $30,000 to $40,000 for a human, around the same price for a nicer, newer car today. If you're enjoying the video so far, click the like button, comment down below for the algorithm, anything at all, and subscribe to the channel. It won't sign you up for anything, you won't be charged, you won't be spammed with emails or anything like that. All it does is help my channel grow. Thank you as always. Prices could spike even higher in booming regions. In states like Alabama, during the height of the cotton boom, a skilled worker could sell for more than $50,000 in today's money. But it's really not the number that's so insulting, it's the principle of just buying a person. Several factors determined the price. Teenagers and young adults were considered prime working age. Men were valued higher for field labor, while women were sometimes priced for field or domestic roles. Someone trained as a carpenter or a cook could demand a huge premium. Discounts and deals were also common, no different than the way that you and I would shop today. Package deals and buy one get one free deals also existed. You know, buy the woman and get her toddler son for free kind of idea. So-called unseasoned slaves would often have their price reduced, since they weren't acclimated to American conditions, and slaves purchased just after harvest, when demand was lower, were usually priced lower. Defects, that is, slaves likely to try to escape or defy commands, likewise could be purchased at a lower price. However, like any items in any market, the price of a slave fluctuated wildly depending on economic conditions. During the Panic of 1837, a major financial crisis, prices temporarily dropped as land speculation and cotton prices collapsed. Conversely, in booming years leading up to the Civil War, prices for enslaved persons could double as demand for labor skyrocketed and the threat of Republican Abraham Lincoln ending the practice drove numbers up. In some cases, enslaved people were even used as collateral for loans or to pay off debt, literally banking on human lives. This really drives home the fact that the African slaves were entirely chattel or property, and not people. The dehumanization of the people was a key aspect of ensuring nobody felt too bad about doing what they were doing.
What did you think we were before you began to think of us as human beings?
Well, in a way, we thought of you almost as a very superior pet. Something, or rather someone, we had to take care of, because we had to do so much of their thinking for them.
To put it bluntly, enslaved people were one of the biggest financial assets in 19th century America. Some estimates suggest the total value of all enslaved people in the US, which numbered around 4 million, 13% of the population, reached over $3 billion by 1860. That's over $100 billion in today's money, about the size of a big Fortune 500 company today. Combine the horrific treatment of the black slave with this newfound knowledge of the business behind this institution, and you begin to understand why violent abolitionists like John Brown and Cassius Marcellus Clay became so radicalized. I have a video about Clay's life of violence against slaveholders if you're interested, link in the description. Despite all of this though, some way, somehow, the actual sale of the slaves was 100% worse than you think. After a 2-month period of near starvation in a disease-ridden ship's cargo hold, inhaling the fumes of decomposing bodies, urine and feces, shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of other soon-to-be slaves, Africans would be loaded off in shackles and quickly forced into slave jails for days or weeks before the sale. This next part is maybe the most dehumanizing part of the transaction. Right before the auction, slaves will be prepared in order to maximize their value. The auctions depicted in popular media don't often show this. but history helms will. Slaves will be stripped if they weren't already naked, cleaned head to toe, have oils and makeup applied to hide physical trauma like scrapes, bruises, and cuts, and sometimes have gray hair dyed to make them seem younger. Inspection took place just after, with potential buyers checking for concealed injuries, opening the slaves' mouths with their fingers to check teeth, and squeezing them to observe muscle mass and perceive fertility. Just like modern business, the idea was to represent a beautiful product in order to justify higher prices. Soon after, slaves would be presented on auction blocks, and normally these auctions followed the bidding format, where the auctioneer would present a starting price and the enslaved person would go to the highest bidder. But something called the scramble auction was also popular, where instead of bidding, the enslaved would be placed in an open area with a price fixed to them in advance, and buyers would sprint to grab as many slaves as they could, claiming them by tying them up or otherwise restraining them in a first-come, first-served style of business. It was not uncommon for slaves to be haggled over and deals to be cut. I told you, however bad you thought this was, it was worse. Various other forms of slave purchasing existed outside of the auction we usually envision, like private sales between individuals, like an uncle selling his nephew a slave for a discount, estate and legal transactions where a father could write his slaves into his will to his sons, and trader sales, where professional slave traders, yes they were a thing, purchased slaves in bulk and resold them in different markets for a profit. We can safely say that practically every business model in human history has been used in one way or another to sell slaves. And let me emphasize, these auctions were fairly popular, not just economic, but also social events. Advertisements in newspapers and posters would list everything about the top picks for enslavement: age, skills, height, temperament, docile or aggressive, slow or efficient. It's shocking and it's hard to wrap your head around, but understand that these prices tell us something about the economics of slavery and why it persisted for so long in the United States. Money, labor, and greed were the driving forces that kept the system alive, even as countless people suffered under it. During the antebellum period, it meant something for your reputation and social status that you could afford muscular and hard-working, yet obedient slaves. Real mothers, fathers, and children reduced to dollars and cents. So how much did a slave cost? Put simply, the same price an upper middle-class man would spend on a new vehicle today. The better the slave, the better the labor, docility, profit, and social status one could achieve. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, toss me a like, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe if you like this format. Thank you for watching as always.